I have a friend who had like $50,000 sitting in his checking account. And he was like, yeah, I want to buy a house. Didn't even have it in savings, wasn't even investing it. And I'm like, man, what did he do differently than I did? OnlyFans is a thing.
It is.
Like, privacy is not a thing anymore. Ticker launched on the anniversary of the day I got fired, to the T. Like, I was like, tell me this is not meant to be. Tell me this is not God.
I love the gamification around making more money.
Our goal is to prove ourselves wrong, not to prove ourselves right as a founder.
Not in the Vancouver area, and gives our listeners the opportunity to learn from people that are doing amazing things, just not in our vicinity. So great to have you. And why don't you kick us off with a rundown of what Ticker app is and how it all began?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Ronick. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Logan Jones. I'm the founder and CEO of Ticker. We are a verified social investing app that's helping Gen Z and millennials overcome hesitations they have to investing by showing them what other people are actually doing in the stock market, all verified through their connected brokerage. And our goal is really to help generate the first financially free generation. That's not, over here in the US, Social Security is not looking so good. So how can we make sure we're set up for our futures? And we believe that investing is the way to do that. And we're starting with this vehicle called the stock market. I guess backstory, you want me to hop into that, Ronick? Or
yeah, that's the number one thing you want to hop into. So
yeah, okay, great. No, I love telling this story. And I'll probably give you the version that I can give you the full version rather than when I have 2 minutes to pitch it. So I got into investing back during COVID, like millions of other people. Friends and I started in group chats together. Robinhood kind of opened the floodgates and access to the stock market and fractional shares and things like that.
Right.
And I was always pretty money conscious. Like, I was a manager at Nike for a while. A lot of my 401k is through Nike's employee stock program. So I've always invested in my 401k and savings and things like that. But I didn't really know a lot about the stock market. So started in group chats with friends. We were sending stocks we were buying. We were sending research. This is back during like the vaccine race. So We were like, which one's going to win? I made some money off of Moderna and things like that. And then I actually got a free share of GameStop from inviting a friend to join Robinhood. You know how they do the whole like free share when you invite someone? So I got GameStop at like $3. 3 months later, I sold it at $12 thinking I had 2x money I didn't spend. GameStop's going nowhere in this increasingly digital society. 3 months later, it's $421 a share. It was like a 35x return from what I sold it at. And I'm like, how the heck did anybody know about this? So that's when I found out about Wall Street Bets. Had never heard of it. Wasn't a big Reddit person, which is hilarious because now I'm like super into Reddit. I'm big into crypto. So you look at my communities, it's just all crypto. But I was not a Reddit person. I did not get Reddit back then. Found my way to Wall Street Bets. At first, I thought it was great, right? Seemed similar to what my friends and I were doing offline, but I'm thinking I'm getting intel from millions of other people. Quickly realized after a while that it was a lot of fake screenshots and hype and misinformation. Like, people would post screenshots and then other people would pick it apart and be like, oh, these numbers don't relate and blah, blah, blah. And I quickly realized, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Now, mind you, Ronick, I am a first generation investor. I didn't have an example in my family. My parents at one point were living like paycheck to paycheck. They were big into like 401k and more traditional investment vehicles, but anything risky, right? Like properties or stocks, like they were not about that. So I didn't have an example. Investing wasn't a conversation in the home aside from, save and 401ks and things like that. There wasn't a lot of financial literacy. So I was just looking for a reliable starting point. And I figured seeing what other people were doing, and not just what were they doing, but how much are you investing? How often, right? Not just you're buying Apple, but like, do you have to buy the whole share? Do I need thousands of dollars to invest? Kind of demystifying the stock market. Right. That's what I was looking for. And I just got lost and frustrated sifting through the clutter, trying to figure out what was worth exploring further in Reddit. And that's kind of when I got to that verification problem that you've seen on our website and things like that. So usually I make this seem like a shorter process. This is all in 2020. 2021 is when the GameStop craze happens. This is not a ploy for meme stocks or anything. It's just how I got into the stock market, right? Or how I got into Wall Street Bets. A couple years later, I graduated law school. I took an unpaid internship with a legal AI startup. And then I ended up turning that into a paid chief of staff role. So I'm chief of staff, which is awesome, dream job, but I'm making like $15 an hour as a BARD attorney out of law school. Law school debt, had a ton of credit card debt. I became very obsessed with personal finance. So at the
Right.
time I was reading things, I was watching every Netflix documentary or show on money, and the GameStop documentary comes out in 2023. And I remember watching it, and during that time I was just thinking like, man, what if there was a way to see how other people were actually like investing their money or what they were doing with their money?
Right.
This really came from my own introspection of, man, I am in the hole for all this credit card debt. I have a friend who had like $50,000 sitting in his checking account. And he was like, yeah, I want to buy a house. Didn't even have it in savings, wasn't even investing it. And I'm like, man, what did he do differently than I did? Like, what if there was a way to see that? That night I went to bed and I remember looking at an app, like looking at a screen on my phone and saying, wow, you can see everything. And I woke up the next morning with the idea for Ticker, like a way to see almost like Venmo for investing. Like, what are people
Sure.
doing? How much? How often? And that's
Right.
really a full backstory on how Ticker came to be.
That is a great backstory because it's got like a personal vendetta of sorts attached to it, and that usually is a good motivator when you're trying to build something, trying to start something, and obviously the revenue isn't coming in, but you got to keep showing up daily, keep making progress, and only you know what progress you're making. The other people just seem like they're in a lot of ways judging you for what you're doing, but you know that there's progress being made, right? We'll jump into the specifics of the app and stuff, but I want to understand, you just mentioned you came from a background where investing wasn't a conversation in the family, especially not over dinner. What do you think your family thought of this at the very beginning? You sort of, putting all your eggs in investment app or the investment social network app as such.
Yeah, that's a good question. So at first I was just kind of inching the idea forward. And I remember like getting my little pitch deck together, the first ever Ticker pitch deck and my own little mock-ups that I created. And I remember I like went to my parents and showed them what I had, like walked them through my pitch deck. And I remember my dad is pretty realistic. He's not like, he's a dreamer, but he's not a dreamer for my brother and I.
Yeah.
He's very much like, be realistic, do the thing. He's been burnt by his own dreams, so he doesn't want us doing that. So getting positive feedback from him was pretty big. And I remember him going, he was like, my only recommendation, this is like right after, what was it, 2023. So this is like almost election season again, I believe.
Yeah.
He was like,
Yeah.
my only critique is that you talk about democratizing finance. And he was like, people could attribute that to a political term. But he was like, other than that, he was like, I think this is a great idea. He was like, it's a
Right.
win-win. He was like, people are able to learn and see what other people are investing in. He's like, hedge funds, like you could use this data obviously to like show them where the sentiment is and use that data. Like there's a way for everyone to kind of rise together essentially, where the hedge funds see what the retail investors are doing, so they're not getting burnt like GameStop, but then the users are kind of still at the forefront of those things. The trajectory has changed a little bit and we care a lot more about our users, and hedge funds aren't really a focus. But I
Right.
remember him being like, this is a great idea. Like this, I can't believe it doesn't exist. My mom thought it was cool. She's very much like, yeah, we know you're going to do something great in life, whatever. I think for them, where it got a little dicey was, okay, I had this startup I was working at, I'm getting paid and I'm inching Ticker forward. Then I got an even better job. I was making really good money. And still moving Ticker forward. I pitched at TechCrunch early stage, actually. That was really the traction that kept me going. And then I got into Pennovation Accelerator at UPenn. And that's where I started like really fleshing out the pitch and the business model and things like that.
Right.
But again, I'm just inching it forward while I have a full-time job. I got unexpectedly let go at the end of October in 2024. And the first thing I said was, this is God kicking me out of the nest to work on Ticker. Cause I was starting to get complacent. I'm making good money. I'm like, do I really want to do this? Like, I know where my paycheck's coming from. You hear all these founder stories. I'm getting up early and staying up late to work on Ticker. I'm like, is this really the life that I want? I kept it going, but I was losing some of that steam. And I apparently I had a conversation with a friend one time and I was like, I just feel like I have too much of a safety net. Like I almost need to just
Yeah.
put all of my like eggs in one basket, like you said.
Do you think that complacency would have kind of diffused the dream that you've had for like, I don't know, maybe a year or so before you're in this situation? Do you think that kick was absolutely necessary for you to see the success that you're seeing today, or do you feel like you could have gone a little bit longer doing both things at the same time?
100%. I don't think things would have progressed as well or as quickly as they did. And it has taken full-time attention. I think if you can, keep your job and still run your startup, that's great. But that split focus, it impacts you. And that was felt. As soon as I was just full on Ticker, I never looked back. And that's the part where I think my parents are like, okay, you're a BART attorney. You've worked really good jobs. Like, why not find something else while building
Right.
Ticker? Like, build Ticker. But they were not ready for me to put all my chips into the middle of the
Fair
table.
point.
But I honestly can say I don't think we would be where we are right now. So I actually, Ticker launched on the anniversary of the day I got fired to the T. Like, I was like, tell me this is not meant to be. Tell me this is not God.
Was that intended, or was that just, oh, we're at a point? Oh, wow. Okay.
No, so I got fired on October 28th, 2024. I had pitched at TechCrunch early stage in Boston, smaller conference, and the guy in charge was really impressed with my pitch, and we stayed in touch. So once I was full time, I was building a team, and I had posted a role for a product manager, and the guy in charge of TechCrunch reached out, and he was like, "Hey, I see you're hiring. Seems like there's progress. Where you guys at?" Because one of the big things with TechCrunch is you had to have an MVP. We didn't have an MVP yet, but we were well on our way. And he was like, "Listen, applications are due in June. If you have an MVP, I really encourage you to apply. I think you'd be a great fit." And so I got the application in. We got an MVP done in time, and we ended up getting selected. And I remember thinking how much I knew the conference is typically at the end of October. And I was like, how much you want to bet that the conference is going to be during the time that I got fired and the day that, and the plan was if we are pitching at TechCrunch, we are launching there, like
Right.
making it a part of the big
Right.
thing. I think a fifth of their companies typically launch at TechCrunch, so it's all part of the pomp and circumstance. And, they're journalists.
It gives you like a ready audience as well to pitch and launch, right? It almost makes it like your own personal private launch party, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and exactly. I looked, and the conference was October 27th to the 29th, and I was like, how much you want to bet we're going to pitch on the 28th? Sure enough, we pitched in the morning block of the 28th. I ended the pitch with, I shared what we were doing, and at the end, I was like, and we're launching in the App Store in 3, 2, 1. And then Ticker was live.
Wow, that's a full circle moment right there.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So before we get into, what the app is, how it works, what the vision is, I want to kind of understand, when you've got an idea, you start to work towards the basics, the documentation, you put a plan together, you've got sort of a plan in mind that you want to, execute on. But what are the immediate 5 steps that you take in order to actually execute on that loose plan that you have?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I did that I think made this all work was I first took inventory. Like, for me, I was like, okay, I have this idea. I want this app to exist. What do I have and what do I need? Well, I'm non-technical. I don't code.
Right.
So I need someone who can build the app. And then secondly, we need someone who wants the app. So I'm like, okay, great. I'll go find the people who want the app and basically do that. Like, what I didn't realize at the time was basically doing user discovery while I'm also recruiting and building the team to, build the app.
Right.
I had recruited interns and ran like co-op programs in the past. I was very familiar. In the US, we have something called the CPT and OPT programs, like curricular practical training or something like that. We got really good. I didn't have money either. Didn't have a ton of money. I had some savings.
What does the funding look like in this situation?
Yeah, so it started with me bootstrapping, and I used most of the savings that I had. I had a decent amount of savings, not a ton though, at all in the world of startups. So we didn't have a lot of money. So the first thing was, how do we get a bunch of people to believe in this? And essentially got really good at finding people who needed experience more than they needed compensation. And obviously, like, we worked out our compensation and things like that. We made sure it was mutually beneficial, but we got a lot of international students who are brilliant. A lot of people from India, China, they worked in their other countries. They come over here. They need an American role to get an American job, but which comes first, the chicken or the egg? We're like, hey, like, you can sharpen your skills, you can work here, build up your resume. And a lot of them leverage it to get better jobs at the end. So it was a win-win. We also found people who were currently either unemployed and looking for something. So they're just trying to keep their skills sharp. They're not getting paid anyway. And then having something on their resume helps them get another role more easily. Or we found people who were just kind of bored with the monotony of their current jobs and wanted to moonlight on something exciting. So that's kind of like the 3 things that we found as we've gone through.
That you just mentioned, like people wanting to moonlight for the satisfaction of, growth and working on something exciting is really underrated. Like, I think a lot of people are actually looking for something like that. So good on you to find that out and, exercise that power.
Yeah, I think this has been a great masterclass in just asking. Like, the worst people can say is no, and then you're in the same situation you were in before. But we've had over 55 volunteers come through Ticker at this point. It's been a year and a half now. We had our first developers come on in January, and we've had over 55 volunteers. over 40 of them have extended their initial contracts with us. So they're basically like, hey, we're not paying you. And they're like, great, we want to stay longer. Like, we love the culture. We love what we're building. They're, when they get their co-ops or they get internships with Google and these other places, because these are master students,
Right.
like not just undergrad. We have a mix. But when they have their internships with Google, they're doing the same thing every single day. When they come in at Ticker, they're doing things that would take them 5 years to get to other places. So it's a good trade-off. So getting back to your question, I was like, okay, I need people who can build this. I had in previous roles, I had pretty much run HR, perks of being chief of staff and having legal background. So I knew what to do. I was familiar with these processes. I got people on, I got them trained. We were basically kind of like, hey, we're starting from ground zero. So you have a lot of say in the tech stack and all those things, which was really exciting to them.
Right.
While they're building the app, I'm talking to people. I started reaching out to investing clubs and finance clubs at different universities because I was like, how can I find a bunch of people who are already interested in this, who are in the age demographic that we're looking at? Because again, older people aren't as apt to share these more taboo topics.
I agree.
Whereas younger generations, we're doing away with privacy in Gen Z and below. You know what I mean? Like I always tell people, and I'm like, OnlyFans is a thing.
It is.
Like privacy is not a thing anymore with this generation.
OnlyFans getting a mention on my podcast was not on my bingo card. But
yeah, this used to be part of my pitch as like a haha. I've kind of moved away from it, but that's what I always say because you'd always get now that Robinhood is launching a social branch, people don't question the idea anymore. But before that, everyone's like, who would want to do this? And I'm like, Gen Z wants to talk about money. They want to talk about what you're earning. They want to learn, and they are doing away with the taboos that older generations have. And I was like, look at OnlyFans. Like they're putting literally everything out there. Like, it's not so crazy to think of putting your financial strategy out there when you think of the things that are on OnlyFans.
I mean, you'd think that, your financial moves would be on the internet before the rest of it, but clearly we were wrong to assume that.
So basically I would talk to them. It started out with me kind of pitching the idea and getting feedback, and then we got a lot more strategic in, hey, what does your investing experience look like? What are struggles you're having? And really doing those like user interviews to figure out what problems we can solve for them. And so I focus mainly on getting the traction, applying to accelerators, talking to real users or prospective users, getting interest while the team was building the app. And so that was really where I started, was like, let me take inventory. What do I have? What do I need? And just breaking things down into very small steps. Like, what is the next thing I need to get closer to the goal?
That's actually a very solid plan. I think taking inventory of what your skills are as a founder and filling the gap with others, either the tech side of it or the sales side of it, marketing side of it, whatever it is that you don't possess. I think it's best to sort of go out there and look for it in the market, and you look hard enough, you find it. Obviously, when you started this in 2023, vibe coding wasn't a thing. There wasn't AI didn't exist. I mean, when I started my marketing agency, it was a completely different landscape altogether. Like AI didn't exist. Clients didn't go like, hey, AI can do this. I mean, I don't think AI can do everything today either, but to the common man, it's kind of like AI can replace a lot of the professional services that you're kind of paying for. Do you think that if you would have started today, you'd have a much better approach to it through, say, vibe coding or through AI for product management or anything of that sort? Like, what do you think would be the difference if you started today versus in 2023?
Honestly, I think if I started today, I'd be behind, because I think starting at the time that I did where AI was still on the rise, like AI was there. I remember talking to potential investors and things like that. And they're like, how are you incorporating AI? AI is the next thing. You need AI in your product. But it wasn't like everyone's using AI or doing AI. Vibe coding was definitely not a thing. It was kind of a thing. It was, no code was still bigger than vibe coding, put it that way. Like I remember when I was trying to figure out how do I build this myself, no code was kind of the answer, which was very complicated. And I didn't know enough about vibe coding. I think going through this process, we now have basically, our team before was pretty much manually building the app, and now our entire dev team has an agentic pipeline.
Great.
Claude is connected to pretty much everything in our business. We're actually running product management through Claude, and started with ChatGPT. So I'll be like, I have an idea for a feature. Ask me questions one by one. Right. Here's a markdown file on what we're trying to do, like our mission and the legal components around this, and compliance and things like that. So I think coming up at the time that we were forced me to learn, like I learned AI little by little, where even now I'm starting to look at potentially vibe coding some of the features connect it to the GitHub and all these things. I've learned so much, and I was so non-technical when I started that now I can have full conversations with developers, and I'm asking them. They joke now. They're like, wow, look at Logan's becoming a developer. So I think it actually helped me at the time that we did. And if we started right now, I would be out of luck because I wouldn't even know enough to instruct the team to start using AI in the ways that we have. And a lot of the AI integration came from advisors pushing me educating myself a little bit, and then going to my head of engineering, who she's had over 10 years of
Right.
development experience, but she was before the AI wave. So she's still learning. Like, we have master students who are teaching her how to use these
Right.
agentic flows to go faster and move better. Like, I would have been way more behind than I am right now
Right.
had we started just now.
That's a great perspective. I think it's a good way to put it. I feel like starting early on in the AI race and learning a little bit every couple of weeks, or as features sort of were unveiled by, say, Claude or OpenAI, it kind of makes it less overwhelming. Like, I feel like if I were to just start learning about AI maybe today or a year from now, it's just going to be too much to even have me sort of be interested in it, to actually sort of pick it as a hobby, or to extend it as part of my daily working habits, right? Do you think the cost effectiveness of your product and the amount of effort or money it took you to sort of bootstrap and launch, do you think that would have been subsidized significantly with AI right from the get-go?
That's a good question. So essentially, backstory, we pretty much built an MVP and then scrapped it and built another MVP.
Okay.
And that is like one of the biggest product lessons I learned is we should have just shipped, got it in front of users, gotten feedback, and polished it a little bit more later. But we completely changed our UI, UX, and then we had to match the back end of that, which just ended up being like creating 2 apps before we launched, having the timeline of TechCrunch because we were like, this is our goal. We're launching at TechCrunch. I think we probably could have had the app in a much better and more stable place where like now we're just getting to the point where the app is stable. Like, we're out of MVP. We're truly moving into V2 right now. Like, V1 is done. We're getting into V2. We're adding features. Before, the focus was just on what are people buying and selling in the stock market, and it's all verified. And then we thought that our users wanted to see what are people doing, but they actually want to know what are people thinking. Like, once we did our user feedback after MVP V1, they were like, we want the context. Like, how are people reacting to the news? Why are people buying what they're buying?
Right.
What they're doing is a symptom of what they're thinking. We want to know what they're thinking. So now we're optimizing the app more for getting more sentiment, more context, and things like that. And that was kind of like V1. V2 is now engagement. Like, people are like, great, it's cool to see what other people are doing, but like, what is the full point? Like, what can we do on the app? And now we're getting some really interesting features that we're building out right now to give people something to do, to help them learn and develop confidence in making investment decisions, picking stocks and ETFs and crypto and things like that. I think we would have gotten there a lot faster. And so, to your point, yes, I think while our monthly spend, like our burn is very low,
Okay.
we've been very cost effective, but still, that would have been more money in the bank had we moved faster. We probably would have gotten more users on faster. We probably would be at the point, like, we're just getting to start testing monetization because we're getting these better features in the app. I think we could have gotten there sooner. So, yes, I think to answer your question more directly, I think optimizing with AI sooner, we would have moved faster. We could have monetized sooner. We probably could have raised a little bit faster as well because investors are looking at how quickly can you grow, and the fact that it took us so long to build, and then it took us a little bit of time to iterate. Like, what we went from shipping one feature every, I think at one point it was like 5 weeks, to now our dev team is getting in, 7 to 10 pull requests. So these are features or improvements a week.
Right.
And then we're just getting builds out to the App Store and the Play
And it's
Store.
that much fun, right? With each sprint.
Yeah, we like 10x with AI.
Fair enough. Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable bump up in pace. Speaking of like sentiments and people wanting to know more about why people are buying, why people are selling, how they're reacting to the news and whatnot. So I've been an investor for quite a while. Again, very similar background to yours, like very similar family background, where mom and dad never wanted to invest money into like stocks. It was always about like mutual funds, life insurance policies, 401k, all of that stuff, right? 401k equivalents, lots of savings accounts. I was always told to save money as a kid. Investing was literally never a term that was ever discussed or spoken about, which made me very curious about what investments really were, how people invested. And, I think Wealthsimple really changed the game for us in Canada, at least, and Robinhood in the US. And I've had the very opportunity to use both tools quite extensively. And I think the social aspect of it, the social element of it was always missing in these apps. So whenever I would leverage an online brokerage, I would always sort of pair that with a social tool very similar to what Ticker app is. And my understanding of it is quite limited, obviously, because I haven't used it yet. But how is it different from StockTwits, something that I've previously used and leveraged to gain understanding of people's sentiments, finding out more about a stock that's on the riskier side, but I want to see, what the investor sentiment is, regardless of news or statistical analysis of a stock. One, how is it different? And two, I feel like you guys play a lot on the trust factor, because obviously if I can't trust what's being shared on the Ticker app, I'm not going to come back and use it for the same reasons as I don't use StockTwits anymore, right? It just keeps playing with my head as a long-term investor.
Yeah, so obviously StockTwits was like the first one out the gate in this social space. I think they came out in like 2008, so I was well aware of them when I started working on Ticker at the time. So StockTwits has grown a lot, actually, even just in the last few years since I've been working on Ticker. At the time, it was basically Twitter for stocks, right? People could say whatever they wanted. People would post screenshots. Again, same problem as Reddit. Nothing's verified. How do I know that you didn't just go to Photoshop and change things or tweak things or whatever? So it was good about having like conversations, or not even conversations. It was good about sharing thoughts, because it wasn't even really turning into conversations on StockTwits. But nothing was verified. They're not linked to a brokerage. There's no verification. It's just whatever that person decided to post. That you could be taking a screenshot from your mom or dad's portfolio and posting that. You know what I mean? So the credibility wasn't there. They have gotten a lot more into the sentiment game in the last 3 years since I was working on Ticker. I was on there recently because we're moving into more of that sentiment space as well. And I was like, wow, they really have developed this, and maybe we'll take some notes from there. What's interesting, you're in Canada. What's interesting is Blossom was like a whisper. I don't know if you've heard of Blossom Social, have you?
I have. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we could take notes on their distribution model. It's incredible. I have to give them that. That was a whisper in the wind when Ticker started. Like I had heard kind of a Blossom, but it was very much in Canada. Like I don't even think they were in the US yet. And my research shows now that they actually raised a good deal of funding in like 2024, 2025 and plan to expand in the US. So they are starting to expand a little bit more in the US. The users that we've spoken to, or the prospective users, still haven't heard of Blossom. So we're trying to capitalize on the US market while we can. But I would say, more directly to your question of like what distinguishes us, one, we're getting a lot closer to answering that question now. Like I think for a while we were very similar. They have the verified portfolios. They actually use the same provider. So we use a third party similar to Plaid, where we verify the connections to the brokerages and things like that. Blossom was doing virtually very similar to what we were doing. I think the biggest thing is that they're more like, here's a portfolio, like the entire portfolio, and it's verified. We show the entire portfolio as well, and we allow you to connect with multiple brokerages. So like a lot of our users are connected to Robinhood and Coinbase, and all of their crypto stuff is there. So you can just view it all in one place. But we also show that individual trade by trade. Like Ronick bought 5 shares of Apple. It depends on your privacy settings. You can hide quantities and things like that. But like Ronick bought Apple, Ronick bought this. So I can see how frequently you're investing and how much you're investing depending on what you allow me to see.
Okay.
I have a friend actually who has recurring investments every single Friday. You'll see it on Ticker. Every single Friday, she invests in the subscriptions that she pays for. So every time her Netflix bill comes out, she's buying Netflix, Spotify, like, so you can see her strategy. And that was the idea, is like showing trade by trade automatically. Our system posts for you. You don't post yourself when it comes to your actual investments. We're starting to add to that where you can share other things as well. 2 of our biggest competitors are Blossom and After Hour. And I think the biggest distinguisher is that they, like, After Hour allows you to cherry pick what you post. Like, you manually push your trade that'll say, Ronick, you bought Apple. Do you want to share this with everyone? You say yes or no.
Okay.
So that means if it's a bad trade or something like that, you're able to hide it. Ticker tells the full story. Trade by trade, strategy by strategy, how much, how often. I grew up a pretty big portfolio of Apple, which is like the biggest percent of my holdings right now. $20 at a time. Like every week I invested $20 in Apple. I think a share of Apple is like $300 right now, give or take. And so I was just buying fractional shares, but over time that accumulated. And so showing that to people so other people can learn, because even we talk to new investors all the time. They're thinking, oh, I have to have thousands of dollars to invest, or, oh, it's not going to make a difference if I just buy this little fractional share. But over time, or when a reverse stock split happens or something like that, well, I'm earning dividends off of these little investments that I've built up over time. And so I think that is kind of the distinguisher currently, but we are adding some more gamified learning and some interesting features coming out soon.
Awesome. So you just mentioned, acquiring customers that haven't really heard of Blossom yet. So that I think is a great segue into marketing for Ticker app. So what do you guys do what are the top 5 strategies that you use to market the product that you've created?
Yeah, and by top, you mean most effective, I assume.
Sure. It could be the most effective ones, but sometimes I feel like, marketing is like it's a fun thing. So I'd love to hear things that didn't stick, but you really enjoy doing as well. And maybe something that you really believed in, but didn't work out.
Okay, yeah. So I would say by far the most effective strategy, it's not scalable, but it has been me kind of sharing the story and the mission and like my backstory, the heart of Ticker, our goals. People seem to really resonate with that. So, getting on these calls with investing clubs, women in business club, a lot of women, what I'm finding is that women and people of color, they really relate to my story. A lot of the women tell us, hey, my dad talked to my brother about investing, but he didn't really talk to me. Or, oh, I want to invest, but I always think that I have to talk to my uncle or my brother or my dad. There has to be a man in the loop, and there's not that empowerment. Every single time I've spoken to like a college class, I've gotten into like finance classes or entrepreneurship classes, or I'll share my career journey with people. There's always, without a doubt, someone, typically a woman, who raises her hand, or a person who raises their hand and says, I was just talking to my friends about how we need to like start investing. And maybe if we all just start together and start figuring it out, like we can get somewhere.
Right.
And they're like, your app is perfect for this. Like, and that was the idea. The original idea behind Ticker was small communities coming together to show each other. Like I could have a group for my family and they're seeing like what I'm doing.
Right.
You could have your group of friends. It was all based on followers. But with all social networks in the 21st century, a lot of our users were like, Instagram, TikTok, there's a feed waiting for them when they're there. There's not that cold start problem. So we do have a public feed now. You're able to see what other people in the app are doing if they're public. But it was originally designed around smaller communities where,
Right.
Ronick and his friends could just follow each other and you decide who sees what and things like that. You still do, obviously, but if you're public now, everyone can see it. So one, I would say talking to investing clubs and speaking to people, number one way. Anytime I've pitched anywhere or expoed somewhere, we typically see a pretty good conversion rate. One time I talked to a class of probably 30 and 20 something of them downloaded the app. So that's pretty, yeah. What we just did recently that worked really well, we did something called Sign Up Showdown, and we offered $1,000 to the person or team that brought in the most signups, minimum of 25 signups, right? Then I realized, oh man, I really don't want to pay $1,000 for 25 signups. So I need to recruit people I trust where they can actually make sure this is competitive. We ended up bringing in, within a month, we brought in over 130, I think we brought in 134 signups just from that competition. And I mean, it was neck and neck. People were going for it out of nowhere. And then because of a little loophole, we haven't had to pay the prize yet. So we'll see. So now those are basically free. But it worked a little bit better than we thought it would. And that was just starting with our little small community that we had at the time. I think we grew 72% in that month just from that competition. We've been focusing on TikTok. We still haven't gone viral. We haven't figured out social media. I think one of my biggest takeaways has been, man, social media is so saturated right now that word of mouth and boots on the ground and that 1-to-1 or that 1-to-30 ratio is really what's working for us. But we are starting to crank it up with social media. We're about to get into paid ads. I have a final investment call tomorrow. Fingers crossed that goes well. We should have a check in a couple weeks. And that's going to give us a little bit of room to start testing paid ads and some other avenues that we haven't looked at yet. But I would say, I know you're asking for 5. It's really been a lot of word of mouth. It's been competitions. It's been content. You know what's interesting? Marketing is one thing, tracking is another. And you probably feel this and see this as someone who's in marketing. So I did something where we just added, we have a referral code. That's how we ran that last competition. We added a, how did you hear about us? So it's like referral code or how did you hear about us on our onboarding. And so now we're starting to see like people are saying like, oh, I found you on TikTok. So we're thinking, okay, TikTok got 1,000 views or a few hundred views or whatever. It's not working. but it's really about conversion. And so now now that we can actually track and see, we're seeing where people are actually coming from. And so I think that's the biggest thing is like, it's one thing to try to pull a lever. It's another thing to be able to track the actual conversion rate on that lever.
I think those are all fantastic avenues for marketing a startup. If I were in your shoes, I'd probably do the same thing. Founder stories almost always do better than any other kind of content out there. So I think you've hit the nail on the head here with your marketing. Talk to me about signups. How many signups? How many users do you have at the moment, and what percentage of those are active users? And yeah, what's the feedback like?
Yeah, so we are still very early. I mean, it's been 6 months, so growth hasn't been as quickly as we've wanted it to be. But one of my advisors, he's very big on, hey, just get enough users to get enough feedback for the next iteration, and then scale from there.
Right.
Get feedback and iterate. So we're about to go into our second round of user feedback. We have, last I talked to our technical team, and we're still getting our like dashboards and things like that up and running. But we have about 620 users. That was as of last week, and we've grown week over week since launch. So we're probably closer to 630, 650, something like that. So still under 1,000, making that push. I believe about 40% of our user base is active monthly. We're trying to get that up as well as, weekly. And so some of these new features that are coming out are literally designed around, improving those KPIs. One feature we're working on right now is similar to, actually in the app right now, but we're still smoke testing it a little bit. So it's behind a feature flag, so people can't see it. But I think by the time this comes out, it should be out. Similar to fantasy football, but for stocks. So you can go head to head with your friends, pick your like fantasy stock or ETF lineup, 5 stocks each for the week. So it's based on your return from Monday market open to Friday market close.
Okay.
The goal is to get users checking back in to see how they're doing throughout the week. So we're getting our weekly active user numbers up, our daily active user numbers up. Our team alone, and we have people on the team who really aren't that interested in finance or just starting to develop that interest. And they have resoundingly said, wow, these new features are fun. Like, I'm actually checking the app more now to test these features and to see how I'm doing in the competitions. Beyond the engagement and the metrics, our goal is to help users develop confidence in picking stocks and ETFs.
Right.
Because for a lot of them, they're like, I don't even know what to do. Well, when you just competed in, we're calling it ticker duels, right? So when you competed in ticker duels for the last 5 weeks and you picked Apple every single time and it did well, maybe you're ready to put your first $20 into Apple or something like that. Like, our goal is that engagement with ticker leads to sustained engagement with the stock market so that our users are building wealth and investing earlier, diversifying sooner. And so features like that are really our goal to help users grow, but also grow our engagement and make the app more interesting and more educational.
I love the gamification around making more money. It's sad to see that we've got to gamify things to be able to make more money and invest in the right things. But I think it's better than gamification for anything else, right? It's personal gain, and I think that's a solid strategy right there. Question for you on that gamification side. Gamification usually leads to a good monetization strategy for most apps. What do you reckon is going to be your monetization strategy for, the long haul?
So one, let me just say, I'm very big on, like, we can gamify learning. We will not gamify the stock market. The stock market's not a joke, and we don't want people going into it thinking that, right? So that's something we're being careful about. But to your point, our end goal is to really fund this app through sponsorships, like sponsored content, not just ads, but like content that provides value to users.
Okay.
So for instance, JP Morgan could slap their logo on something, but also provide insights into an investing strategy or some kind of product that they have that can help the user grow in their wealth building journey. Right. Or like insurance companies, things like that. So finance companies really coming to the app where we have these warm leads already. Like, everyone on Ticker is interested in finance and investing and their futures and things like that. So what are these other products out there that are adjacent to what we're doing where we can provide value to the user, even through the advertisement, so to speak? So that's why we call it sponsored content.
Okay.
That, and then data, right? So obviously, and not like, oh, we're selling your data like Ronick or whatever, but almost going, okay, we have 1 million users on this app, and we can tell you that 80% of Gen Z owns Apple and things like that. Like that's very lucrative data for financial
Right.
institutions. And so anonymizing some of that data, there's also a potential play where we may actually cut users into the sale of their data. So, hey, Ronick, we can make $1,000 off your data. These are the things that we would give them, whether it's, PII is obviously worth more. We wouldn't sell that without your permission,
Yep.
but some other things about you. Hey, this is worth $1,000. We'll cut you in for 400 or something like
Yep.
that, where you're actually making money off of what other apps are doing anyway, because
Right.
trust is big. So that's something we are looking at, but we have to make money soon. One, we want the app, we need revenue to keep the app going. Two, it helps us with investing so that we can
Right.
continue to provide more value to users. And so we are looking at charging for deeper insights and additional usage. So we want the app to be as free and provide as much value as possible. We realize we are targeting a demographic that is the least likely to pay, and a lot of them aren't in position to pay, right? The economy is crap right now, and we don't want financial literacy and like building confidence in building wealth to be something that is now like an economic status thing. Like, oh, well, they can afford it, so only the rich can get richer, right? We are going after the women and the people of color and the people who have typically been left out of the conversation when it comes to investing. And so how do we allow them to provide to get as much value as possible without having to pay? But then if they want to put some money behind it, or, keeping costs low, but they can pay for additional uses of a feature or deeper insights into like our AI generated portfolio insights. So we're telling them, here's what's going on with your portfolio. Here's the health score of your portfolio and things like that. Basically, how do we get them to spend money to make more money or to have superior knowledge or something like that?
Right.
So we are looking at, a monetized strategy in that sense, but the quicker we scale, then the quicker we can get to sponsored content and data and things like that.
I love the first monetization strategy that you mentioned. Sponsored products, or sort of like financial services products that are offered based off of your history, your ability to invest, your threshold of investing. And I think there's a solid potential for any financial institution or service provider to kind of come in and be like, okay, this group that's on ticker is perfect for the service or product that I have. And, boom, here goes. Right. Um, and I also agree with you when you say that the Gen Zs are the least likely to pay for a product. It is hard. I mean, I do feel bad for millennials as well, but feel worse for Gen Zs, right? They're just like, they've been um, in a really tough economic stance since COVID. Right out of college, they're seeing an economic slump. Right out of their first job, they're seeing the same thing. So it is a recurring pattern in their case. And I think a company that kind of sees that and works around that is very likely to succeed in the grand scheme of things. What about advertisements? What about, because a lot of apps these days, what we're kind of paying for is no ads, and people are really going at it with them with those payments. Is that something that you guys have thought about as well?
It's something we've thought about. Again, more so looking at the sponsored side where it's providing value. Something like, for instance, tax season, right? You sold some of your investments, you made money off of dividends or whatever you did. A lot of people start asking questions about tax
Right.
services. Well, our user needs tax services. They're going to feel less disrupted when we're going, hey, here are tax providers and here's a discount on the services or something like that, right? Where they're getting something out of it and it's not us just monetizing their attention or disrupting their experience in the app. There is room for the ads though, obviously, and that's something we've looked at where Ticker Pro could obviously remove ads similar to kind of like Duolingo's strategy and things like that. It's an avenue. It's something we're looking at. We'll see. But I think we're just very focused on trying to provide value to our users. And so even the advertisements or sponsored content should be something that they can glean from.
Sweet. Um, you spoke about investments earlier. I want to understand what the outlook for investments has been for this business. Like in the sense, have you thought of raising funds since day zero, or have you tried to like bootstrap as long as you can before you can, go out there and ask for an investment? A lot of founders that I talk to, everyone has like their own approach to it. Some people believe in raising funds even before they've actually got a concrete concept in place, whereas others are like, I want to put most of my money in it and just wait until I'm in the right headspace to kind of have an investor loom over this whole venture that I've kind of created. So I'd love to get your 2 cents on where you stand with fundraising and investments.
Actually, when I first started out, I was like, okay, I have this idea. I'm going to get somebody else to pay for it. Right. That was my understanding of fundraising and startups and all of that. And honestly, before COVID, you could sneeze in a coffee shop in like Silicon Valley and raise like $3 million. Right. And then COVID hit and the market kind of corrected itself. And now we're in the funding environment right now where it is brutal. Like you're seeing like Series A rounds that are like what a pre-seed used to be. So I went into it thinking like, okay, I'm just gonna fundraise, someone else will pay for this, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know what I didn't know. I studied entrepreneurship in college. That's actually what my degree is in. And I remember taking an entrepreneurial finance class and we learned a lot of this fundraising stuff, but I didn't fully like dilution and all of these other things. Like I learned a lot more of it being in it where it was real to me and not just some experiment to run or simulation in class. So I went into it thinking, okay, cool. I'll just apply to a bunch of accelerators. I'll get funding, like YC, Techstars, all of that. I've actually been surprised at how far I've been able to get without venture capital. And then it kind of flips where you read these horror stories on LinkedIn of how much people exit their companies and walk away with like $200,000, and you're like, oh, I never want that to happen. So for us, it's been a mix. I've been able to get further than I thought with my own savings. And then just as my savings were starting to deplete, I was able to raise a couple of checks on safes. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's a simple agreement for future equity. Basically like a sheet saying, hey, we're giving X amount of money, and at the next price round, we get a 20% discount, and there's like a capped valuation, or there's some sort of discount. Ours was 20%, and then a capped valuation, and we agree as a company that we won't raise more than a certain amount on a safe, so that the investors don't get screwed, essentially. So we're able to raise a couple small checks, and that's what we've been living off of. We've been very capital efficient. We actually just burned through the first check, and we still have a whole second check. So we have enough to get us through the end of the year, but I have been a part of quite a few accelerators, and the last couple that I went through, there was opportunity for investment at the end. It wasn't guaranteed. So like YC, you get into YC, you're getting a check, pretty much like as soon as it ends or right at the beginning. I'm not sure how they do it. I've been at a few where you go through and kind of like the cream of the crop get the investment. Fortunately, the last accelerator I went through, they are expressing interest in investing. I'm in the middle of conversations with them. Seemingly, if this last conversation goes well, we should have a check in hand within the next few weeks. That'll be our first like real check to really do something. Interestingly, I've been looking at, there's a couple fellowships and like grant type opportunities where I've started looking at running Ticker as a research project almost, because that's essentially what we're doing, right? So looking at the intersection of digital communities and status and verification and behavioral finance, like what is most likely to help? What are the things that we can do to ensure that engagement with our app leads to engagement with the stock market? And like studying, like, does verification actually make a difference? Right? Because some of my best investments have come from Reddit. Like I'm seeing my dividend reinvestments come through Ticker, and I'm adding the context, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even know how I found this stock, and then I'm like, I think I found this in Reddit, and it really did well.
Yeah.
So does verification actually matter to users? That's something we're starting to study now in the app. Like, do you actually care? Because there's 20 million people in Wall Street Bets, and I think like 5 million of them are active regularly. Some people actually probably enjoy the anonymity, and you can be anonymous in Ticker too, by the way, but like they enjoy, like, I don't actually know if this is real or not. Like, does it take the fun out of it? The fact that we do verify, do people more want to be a part of the conversation than they want to be a part of the verified solution? So these are things we're all studying where it's like, okay, we have our hypothesis, but one of the things the last accelerator I went through was very big on was approaching our ventures as scientists. Our goal is to prove ourselves wrong, not to prove ourselves right as a founder. And so that's kind of our focus right now is like, okay, we finally have the app in a decent place. Our hypothesis is that if we give users more to do and help them increase their confidence, more people are going to come. They're going to invite other people. There's product-led growth. Let's prove ourselves wrong and figure out what's right and go in that direction as quickly as possible.
Wow, that is you really thought this through. The next question I have for you is more on the personal side. I mean, your company is doing great. You've seen a ton of growth in the last however many years you've spent on this idea. But obviously, with each idea, with every stepping stone to success, you take a toll on your personal life. I want to kind of understand what that's been like. A lot of our listeners are essentially in the middle of either building a business that's already either pre-revenue or revenue, or they've got a really solid idea that they've been working on, or they have a legacy business they're trying to kind of turn around and make it worth um, the modern person's while, essentially. So I want to kind of understand what changes you brought about in your personal life, and how the business side of it has impacted you as a person, as an individual, good or bad.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I appreciate that you asked it. I mean, Ticker is my husband, my baby, like my everything. I am single. I don't have kids, any of that. So Tigger is a big chunk. Like I had a team member, I was able to get with some of my team in Boston yesterday. And one of my team members asked what my day looks like. And I kind of walked them through, my essentially typically like 12-hour day, 6 days a week. And they're like, that's insane. And I'm like, in my head, I'm not doing enough. What do you mean? Like, I'm
Right.
like, there's days where, and it's like, just because you're spending time, one of the biggest things I'm learning is like busyness is not productivity. And like,
Yeah.
great, I just met with the team, different team members for 12 hours this week. Like, what should I have been doing instead? And how am I optimizing my calendar? So I think one, there's a mental toll of never feeling like you're like always questioning, did I spend my time correctly? Like
Yeah.
you grab dinner with a friend and you're like, man, I should have been working on this thing. Or, when you actually try to rest, you're thinking about what you should be doing work wise. And then, work wise, that you need rest. Like even right now, like I told you about it before our recording, I
Yeah.
drove 12 hours yesterday just to go celebrate, some of our developers who graduated from their master's programs. And that was worth it. Like I'm very big on investing in the team. You build people, they will build your company. And these two
Right.
team members in particular were super bought into Ticker from an early time. That's worth it to me. But I spent 12 hours in a car. My body feels it. I'm exhausted. I'm also playing catch up today because I was out yesterday. And then I have events this week. All next week is Philly Tech Week. There's all these things going on. So I even think sometimes there's the like personal, not anxiety, but like the need to take things one thing at a time. Like I'm already thinking, man, I have this and then I have that and I have that. And it's more exhausting than just taking it one thing at a time. A lot of my life is Ticker right now. There was something else I thought of when you asked this question. One of the things that I've had to do, I am not currently taking a salary. I've been surviving off of savings and credit and things like that. And it finally got to a point where like I'm picking up shifts at my gym. Like right before this call, I worked the shift and I'm able to work at Ticker. Fortunately, it's a very chill job, the easiest job I've ever worked in my life. You're saying hi to people, bye to people. It's not a lot.
Right.
So I'm a lot. My boss is awesome. He's like, yeah, you can be on your laptop just as long as you say hi to people and check on things and blah blah blah. So I'll get a
Right.
lot of focused work done there where I'm not on calls and it actually forces me to focus. But I am working a job at a gym, a barred attorney working a job at a gym. At one point, I was getting up at 2:30 in the morning to be there and open the gym at 4 a.m. So I could work like I was working 4 to 9 and then working at Ticker from 9 to 9, pretty much. And so it's exhausting. Like you choose sleep, a healthy like personal life, or work, and you only get
You
like
know, yeah.
one.
I was gonna be generous and go like you can only have two out of the three, but I guess yeah, when you're like really early stage, it's just you pick one for the day and that's what you have. You can't have everything in a day or a week. So I hear you.
Yeah, my friends have had to adjust, and my friends have been very supportive, which is great. I have some really close friends, and like I remember my best friend's birthday. Had we had plans out of town that weekend, and got a bunch of people together to surprise her and all this stuff. Ended up having a pitch in New York City, which is about 2 hours north of me. So ended up going to New York City instead of driving her and driving with everybody. I left straight from New York City at the end of that pitch, probably got on the road around like 10 o'clock and made it to the 2.5 hours away by like 1 a.m. to celebrate her birthday. So I missed out on a big chunk of the night. Like it's a sacrifices we have to make, but yeah, it's things that you didn't consider before where it's like, great, friend's birthday, gonna be there. And now it's like, oh, I have a pitch, I have an event, or like these opportunities come up and you have to seize them. I think one of the hardest things about being a founder is that there's a lot of like horse and pony shows and you don't know what's going to be worth it, right? Like you go to these networking events and one could change your life or one could waste your time and you have no idea, but you have to just keep going. And
Pressure.
yep, you got to show up. And you have
Yep.
no idea what the result's going to be. Sometimes you don't know who's going to be in the room, but you got to keep doing it.
It's sometimes the oddest of conversations that lead to something really big for your company and for your ventures, right? Um, so Yeah. This conversation has been absolutely amazing. And I just realized that you're also the first woman on our podcast. So I'm really proud of that.
No
I'm
way.
really happy.
Season 2, Ronick, you're proud of that?
I mean, look, season one was pretty short and it was my
Okay.
first go at hosting a podcast as well. So you know how shy I am in my personal life. So
All
for
right,
me,
we'll cut you some slack.
this is big. But before we end our conversation, I want to ask you one final thing. For somebody who's looking at growing into the app world or the SaaS world, what are the top three things that you would recommend doing? And what's one thing that you would absolutely, enforce they do not do?
Okay. I think one, every time you have a conversation with someone, you go find them on LinkedIn immediately, even if it's an email. Like every rejection email I've gotten, I add them on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Every like any connection, add them on LinkedIn. And then two, building in public. I was so against this at first, and everyone tells you you're the founder, you need to be the face. I was not about it. Building in
Right.
public has probably been one of the biggest. We were building in public for fundraising, and we were getting users out of it. I remember one time, like my parents called me. One of my parents was like, "Oh, so and so said they're on the app. Like they saw you posting on LinkedIn." I've never heard of this person before, but it was someone they like went to church with or something like that, who like downloaded the app from seeing it on LinkedIn. Also, again, you get a rejection or something like that, but you add them on LinkedIn and now you're building in public and they're seeing like, "Oh, you're serious, you're growing, you gain a lot of
Right.
credibility." And so I think LinkedIn is one of the biggest tools, especially if you're going into SaaS, but for anything, even an app, like I didn't expect to be growing through LinkedIn, but we are. That was actually probably one of the biggest, to answer your marketing question, that was one of the biggest things at first. People were just buying into the journey and me being so open about it. So I would say build in public, connect with people, networking is huge. um, I think the third thing I would say, and maybe this is actually should be the first thing, do user discovery. Like we've had over 1,000 conversations. Before we even built the app, we had had a few hundred conversations. We
Okay.
started with my personal story, but we validated that this was a problem and that other people bought in and resonated with it when we talked to them. And I think a lot of founders fall in love with the solution and not the problem. And they don't listen to the people who are actually going to be benefiting from it. Like you almost decide for people what their solution is going to be, and that's not the best way to do it. So maybe that's kind of getting into what the do not do is, like, do not fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem and stay open to what people have to tell you. Be open to feedback. Everybody has opinions. Do not build for investors. Do not be swayed. Like we'll have conversations and one person tells you to do one thing and then you adjust kind of to what they said and the next person's like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You should do the thing that you were doing before." And so I think a big thing about being a founder is figuring out what's for you and what should be left on the shelf. Just because it's on the shelf doesn't mean you don't come back to it in the future, but you have to have conviction about what you're doing and you know your problem, you know your audience, your customer better than anyone, or at least you should. And so don't be, at the whims of everyone else's opinions either. I think I answered more than what you asked for, but that's what I would say.
I think that's fantastic. This is definitely something people can learn from. And one of the things that I'm gonna pick from this is building in public, because that's something that I've been really afraid to do from the very beginning, and I want to change that. And I think this has given me the motivation to do it, because I've been following what you've been doing, and this is how we've had this conversation today, right? Thanks again for joining us on the first episode of season 2, and it's been a pleasure, honestly.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Ronick. It's been so much fun. Great catching up with you. And yeah, please do build in public. I probably would have reached out to you before you could reach out to me if I knew about this. So you'll get some great talent on this podcast.
Thank you.